Vampires have haunted us for centuries, but the ancient vampires were the most powerful.
There is a real live community that exists not only within the States, but also throughout the world.
Born from old tales in Eastern Europe, their stories caught fire during the Enlightenment, a time filled with curiosity about the unknown, and they are planning to come back. Books like The Vampyre and Dracula locked these nightmares into our minds, where Count Dracula blends elegance with horror. Why are these powerful entities still alive, haunting in the dark?
I suddenly came alive.
Let us explore why the curse still chases us today. The vampire's eternal struggle. In Western literature, the story of the vampire has become a permanent fixture due to key writings such as John Polidori's The Vampyre from 1819 and Bram Stoker's famous Dracula of 1897. Stoker's Count Dracula combines noble charm with frightful features, creating the modern vampire template. This story didn't just spread vampire tales, it brought in new ideas such as their immortality, their fatal reaction to sunlight and wooden stakes, and their need to roam at night. The tale in Dracula beautifully blends these night creatures into Western culture and keeps them interesting. Stoker and others like him make us think about why we are drawn to such scary yet attractive characters. This fascination shows something about human nature, like our mixed feelings about forbidden things and the scary idea of living forever. These stories aren't just fun, they make us face deep fears and wishes through these mysterious beings. These vampire stories make us think about our own fears, desires, and what it means to be human. They challenge our ideas about life's limits and our discomfort with the unknown. As vampire characters change over time, they keep connecting with our basic fears and curiosities about death, living forever, and the extraordinary parts of human life. This look goes beyond simple horror, exploring deep psychological issues and how culture shapes our views of these mythical figures. The horror is obvious. The act of feeding on blood is deeply shocking and touches our basic fears like being hunted and having our personal space invaded. Symbolically, drinking blood is like taking over someone's life force and power. In many stories, vampires don't just survive on blood. They gain strength, a long life, and sometimes magical powers from it. This highlights the vampire's parasite-like nature, where the undead grow stronger at the expense of the living. There's also a dramatic flair to vampire tales. It's more than just survival, it's about a striking exchange of power. There's even a religious angle that mirrors the Christian act of communion, where wine symbolizes the blood of Christ. In vampire tales, this act, which in religion means salvation, turns into one of corruption and predation. The constant focus on blood drinking in vampire lore does more than scare or unsettle us. It also reflects deep human worries about exploitation and losing control, themes that still hit home today. It's a vivid look at how these themes are woven into popular stories, shaping how we see power dynamics in real life. These stories reflect real human concerns and social issues, using the vampire's need for blood as a symbol for deeper, more universal human fears. The Bible claims in Genesis 9, "The life is in the blood." This idea was far ahead of its ancient understanding when medical knowledge was simple and often wrong. It took modern medicine a long time to realize the importance of blood in our physiology. This stands in stark contrast to old beliefs about where life came from in the body. In the past, people thought vital life forces were in different organs, like the kidneys and heart, but didn't see blood's real value. Blood was just seen as another fluid that could get bad and needed to be let out, leading to the widespread but harmful practice of bloodletting. Even more horrifying is the use of blood in ancient rituals and medicine. From the 1st to 6th centuries, there was a dreadful practice involving gladiator blood, believed to cure epilepsy. This idea likely came from earlier religious rituals, suggesting blood had special, life-giving properties. These old medical practices show a big misunderstanding of human biology and a lack of respect for human dignity. The belief in blood's mystical properties lasted for centuries, influenced by religious and cultural traditions. As more scientific understandings of medicine developed, these beliefs slowly faded, but not without resistance. Today, we understand that blood carries essential nutrients and oxygen, critical to our survival, which aligns with the biblical statement in a more scientifically accurate way. However, reaching this understanding was a long journey filled with mistakes and dangerous practices. The strange use of gladiator blood continued even after gladiator fights ended in 400 AD. People thought the blood of executed individuals had a special meaning, almost continuing the gladiator's legacy. This belief stayed in society for many centuries, showing how old, dramatic traditions like using blood in rituals don't easily disappear. Before diving into Ficino's unsettling methods for youth, consider the lengths people have gone to chase vitality, faith, sacrifice, and destruction. By the 15th century, Marcello Ficino, a Catholic priest well-versed in older traditions, brought back the topic of consuming blood, but with a scholarly twist. He argued, using the authority of ancient beliefs, that the blood of young, healthy individuals could help the old rejuvenate. Ficino wasn't just throwing out ideas. He described a detailed method that mirrored medical procedures. He recommended that the elderly should draw a small amount of blood, specifically an ounce or two, from a young person's left arm. This person had to be not only physically healthy but also cheerful and well-balanced, as these qualities were thought to enhance the quality of their blood. The collected blood should then be mixed with sugar and wine and consumed when the individual felt most hungry and thirsty, particularly when the moon was growing fuller. Ficino's instructions highlight a chilling chapter in human history, showing how influential figures, like priests, could legitimize unsettling practices under the banner of tradition and health. It also reflects the desperate measures people in the past would consider to regain youth and vitality. The lengths to which humans have gone in their quest for prolonged life and health often blurred ethical and scientific boundaries. This piece of history serves as a reminder of the complex relationship between cultural practices and the understanding of health and science at the time. It paints a vivid picture of how societal norms and health practices have evolved, often straying into territories that modern sensibilities might find questionable or outright disturbing. Such historical practices invite us to reflect on the evolution of medical ethics and the role of cultural beliefs in shaping health behaviors. The conversation also ties blood to screech owls and the demon Lilith, connecting these elements to old superstitions and religious beliefs that provided supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. These dramatic tales often distract from a deeper understanding of our past, reducing complex beliefs and cultures to simple stories of blood and supernatural elements. The narrative then discusses the use of blood in construction, as noted by Aurel Voltaire. It highlights how human sacrifices were linked with building important structures. The Temple of Shiva and the city of Jericho are key examples, where blood was used to sanctify the sites. The foundation stones of Jericho were even said to be laid using the blood of a king's sons, showing the extreme lengths to which people would go to ensure the stability and sacredness of their buildings. This use of blood extends to Slavic traditions where the word dietes, meaning both a fortress and its human sacrifices, shows a harsh part of our cultural heritage. This reflects the brutal aspects of history that are often overlooked or cleaned up in modern stories. The text later suggests that blood was thought to cure and strengthen everything from bricks to bones, presenting it as an ancient cure-all that could fix any physical or structural problem. These examples also reveal the contradictions in organized religion. The irony of Christians who practiced occult activities highlights a religious landscape full of contradictions and the influence of older, darker beliefs. Finally, the text returns to the city of Jericho, emphasizing its historical and biblical significance. It was a city known not just for its conquest, but also as a place of espionage and salvation, such as in the story of Rahab. Here, the narrative of history, religion, and human sacrifice comes together, reminding us of the complexities and contradictions of our past. This history, where sacred and profane themes often mixed, offers crucial insights into the intricate and sometimes dark facets of human civilization. The story of Jericho is often presented with a sense of religious importance, but when you look closely, it raises some serious concerns. It begins with the mention of a scarlet rope, a symbol of the blood that Christians believe Christ shed for humanity. In the biblical book of Joshua, the scene is set for a dramatic event. At the sound of the seventh trumpet blown by priests, Joshua orders the people to shout because God has supposedly given them the city. He declares that everyone and everything in the city is to be destroyed except for Rahab, a woman who helped Joshua's spies because she hid them in her house. What follows is quite grim. As the walls of the city fall down, Joshua's followers enter the city. They are instructed not just to take over, but to completely wipe out Jericho. They kill every person, young and old, and every animal, cattle, sheep, and donkeys, with their swords. The conflict centered around what was termed corrupted blood, a term used to describe a perceived defect in the people of Canaan, who were descendants of Noah's grandson. The Israelites, driven by what they believed were commands from God, captured cities like Jericho in their mission to take over Canaan. This area was famed not only for its connection to biblical prophecy, but also for its legendary inhabitants, giant figures known as the Sons of Anak, which linked them to ancient Babylon, suggesting a storied and contentious heritage. From Jericho's fall, we move to the troubling orders against the Amalekites, where divine commands meet harsh realities. The dark legacy of Canaan's bloodline. The story presented in the Bible advocated for the complete removal of the Canaanites, including the feared Amalekites, framing them as a direct threat that warranted extreme measures. This perspective is rooted deeply in religious texts, particularly in the antagonistic history between the Israelites and the Amalekites, portrayed as a conflict destined to end in destruction. During King Saul's reign, the prophet Samuel relayed God's message, reminding Saul of the Amalekites' past atrocities against Israel and commanding their total destruction. This stark instruction to eliminate entire communities based on their so-called corrupted blood prompts serious ethical questions. It's portrayed as a necessary act of purification, but this portrayal often overlooks the harshness of committing violence against entire groups. The justification given is a divine command, which simplifies the narrative and masks the harsh reality of such actions. By framing it as a divine directive, the real and brutal consequences of these actions on real communities are often ignored or understated. The narrative reduces complex historical and human contexts to mere obstacles in a divinely sanctioned mission. This oversimplification helps to avoid difficult questions about the morality of such acts. It also skips over the need for a deeper understanding of the historical relationships and human realities of the time, instead presenting the conquest as a straightforward, justified act driven by divine will. This not only simplifies the historical narrative, but also diminishes the opportunity for a more nuanced understanding of these ancient conflicts, painting them as clear-cut and morally unambiguous when, in reality, they were anything but. The Amalekites were a group of nomads living in the desert areas south of Canaan, close to Egypt. They were known for being tough and resilient, thriving in a harsh landscape where few others could. Interestingly, they are not mentioned in the biblical Table of Nations, suggesting they appeared on the scene after the time of Esau, a significant figure in biblical history. The term Amalek might be linked to the Hebrew word aluka, which refers to a horse leech, an animal known for attaching to and feeding on the blood of its hosts. This name gives the Amalekites a dark and fearsome reputation, hinting at acts of blood drinking and the mistreatment of dead bodies. This scripture story presents a brutal example of ancient conflict and the total destruction often sought in warfare. It reflects on the harsh measures taken against perceived enemies and the thoroughness with which they were carried out. The directive to eliminate every trace of the Amalekites underscores a time when survival often necessitated extreme actions against opponents, viewed through the lens of divine justice. This recounting serves as a historical record and a reflection on the depths of human conflict and the intense measures sometimes enacted in the name of security and religious belief. It highlights the grim realities faced by ancient peoples and the devastating strategies employed in their struggles to prevail over their adversaries. The concept of Canaan, a place steeped in tales of divine battles and demonic offspring, is tough for many modern Christians to grasp. Churches often avoid discussing the Nephilim, the giant descendants born from the unions between angels and human women. These topics clash with the cleaner, more straightforward historical views many prefer today. However, those familiar with ancient stories of corrupted bloodlines and strange creatures recognize that these beings have nothing to do with God. This tainted blood produced not only giants, but also various humanoid entities that appear in legends all over the world. One such entity, the vampire, is not born out of the dark corners of medieval fear, but from a lineage as ancient as humanity itself. After Noah's Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, the survivors' first actions were not to honor God, but to celebrate themselves. They aimed to rebuild the corrupt world that had been wiped out by the flood. This desire was especially strong in the descendants of Ham, Noah's son, who laid the groundwork for many future troubles. Looking deeper into the roots of vampirism reveals a continuous trend of human error, ignoring the lessons from our past. It appears that humans are determined to bring back the same forces of destruction they once escaped. In our times, vampires are not the supernatural creatures of cinema, but rather symbols of an age-old battle against our worst tendencies and failures. These figures challenge not just our understanding of history, but also our moral judgment. Their presence points to an uncomfortable truth. Humans often turn out to be their own greatest threat, constantly on the verge of bringing back the horrors they had previously defeated. Throughout history, tales like those of the Nephilim and mythical vampires serve as somber reminders. These stories illustrate the dire consequences when arrogance eclipses wisdom, societies fall apart, and lessons buried by time resurface, posing new challenges to those who have forgotten the past. When Noah wakes up and learns what happened, he doesn't punish Ham, who was responsible for disrespecting him. Instead, he curses Ham's son, Canaan, saying, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers." This punishment seems unfair, as Canaan was not involved in the incident. Noah then blesses Shem and Japheth for their respectful actions, showing his approval and creating a clear divide in how he views his sons. This blessing and cursing seem to reflect deeper issues within Noah's family, perhaps existing tensions or judgments that had been forming over time. By blessing Shem and Japheth and cursing Canaan, Noah not only shows his dissatisfaction with Ham's behavior, but also sets a pattern of reward and punishment that affects future generations. This story from Genesis demonstrates complex family interactions and the harsh judgments that can follow. It questions the justice of punishing someone not directly involved in a wrongdoing, and shows how a single action can affect many people for generations. As Noah's descendants repopulate the earth, the divisions and roles set by Noah's judgments influence the development of societies, highlighting themes of favoritism and the long-term impact of our actions on others. Leaving Noah's family conflicts, we now explore the impactful genealogies and the infamous figure of Nimrod, the lethal tales of ancient Babylon's mighty hunter. The story of Noah and his sons, alongside the events that transpired one fateful night, unveils significant themes regarding human conduct, reverence, and the complexities inherent in family dynamics. This narrative illustrates how personal choices and actions can precipitate far-reaching consequences, affecting not just the individuals immediately involved, but their progeny as well. Through this tale, one can observe a reflection of the broader human propensities to judge and classify others, with the repercussions of such judgments often extending well beyond the initial circumstances. The 9th chapter of Genesis holds particular allure for those intrigued by esoteric knowledge, as the numeral 9 bears a resemblance to 6 when inverted. This visual inversion underscores the notion that situations can possess dual aspects, one benign and the other malevolent. This duality is pivotal in the unfolding of events in Genesis 9, which seamlessly transitions into Genesis 10. Here, the Table of Nations is delineated, detailing the genealogies crucial to the narratives of the Bible, such as the construction of the Tower of Babel. While the specifics of the Tower of Babel's construction are not the focus today, it is crucial to recognize the participants as depicted in the scriptures. They are portrayed in vivid terms: the children of perversion, the children of darkness, and the children of the serpent. These labels forge a stark dichotomy between the forces of good and evil, reconnecting to families entangled in profound disputes over morality and justice. Through these stories, the Bible not only narrates historical events, but also imparts lessons on the enduring impact of human actions and the moral choices that shape history. Genesis 10 gives a detailed account of these families. It starts with the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan, and continues with the sons of Cush like Seba and Havilah and others. This part of the Bible does more than just name people. It connects them to important events and legendary actions. One key figure mentioned is Nimrod, described as a mighty one on earth, known as a great hunter before the Lord. While being called a great hunter might sound straightforward, it suggests that Nimrod was powerful and perhaps even defiant of higher powers. These old stories encourage us to look closely at how power and family lines were seen and shown in the texts of the Bible. They clearly separate those who were seen as good and those seen as bad, those who were blessed and those who were cursed. This isn't just about history or religion. It's a powerful display of the ongoing battle between good and evil, a theme that remains just as meaningful today as it was in ancient times. People often say that Nimrod, known as a great hunter approved by God, started his empire with cities like Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the region called Shinar. According to the stories, there are only two types of kingdoms in the world, one of light and one of darkness. These stories suggest that evil spirits were behind Nimrod's building efforts, although he was just following a path of wrongdoing set by his ancestors. Many ancient records on clay tablets show pictures of important people, ranging from gods to kings, which are similar to those found in the Bible. This repetition hints that those who engaged in evil often twisted historical events, like the Great Flood, turning truths into lies and presenting themselves as divine beings in their own versions of the stories. By changing these stories, they aim to control how people understood the past, positioning themselves not just as leaders, but as gods. This strategy wasn't just about distorting history. It was about securing power by controlling the stories told. Trying to draw clear comparisons or fully uncover how much these stories were changed is difficult without looking at both the archaeological findings and the biblical texts. The artifacts and biblical writings together reveal a complicated time when the divine and human worlds mixed, often manipulated by powerful individuals for their purposes. This manipulation resulted in a view of history where it's hard to tell what's true and what's made up, reflecting the self-serving motives of those who told these stories. The legacy of figures like Nimrod, as detailed in both historical and religious texts, offers a glimpse into how the powerful can shape perceptions of truth to reinforce their control. Over time, these altered tales not only shaped how civilizations saw their gods and leaders, but also how they understood their own history and identity. Each story, altered from the truth, was a brick in the foundation of their rule, crafted carefully to maintain their grip on society. This portrayal of history might seem clear-cut, but digging deeper shows a tangled web of influence and ambition. Ancient writings from Mesopotamia have revealed a wealth of information, and one YouTuber, Trey Smith, extensively covers these topics. He explores the historical figures from ancient texts, such as Noah, Ham, Cush, and Nimrod. In his videos like Nosh, Seed of the Serpent in Genesis, and Noah's Ark, The New Evidence. These videos are accessible via links he provides in his descriptions for those interested in deep dives into ancient civilizations. A particularly fascinating find: archaeologists have unearthed numerous clay figures at Tel al-Ubaid, with more discovered in the cities of Ur and Edu. These statues vary greatly in size and form, some even depicting a reptilian creature nursing a young. Additionally, the area has yielded skulls with unusual elongated shapes. Such discoveries have led some to propose that these figures represent beings influenced by dark supernatural forces, reflecting fears and beliefs of the ancient people. These interpretations suggest that the ancient Sumerians may have depicted what frightened them most through these figures and skulls, hinting at a civilization deeply engaged with the supernatural. This view, however, heavily colors our understanding of their culture, perhaps exaggerating their preoccupations with dark forces. The discussion shifts to the origins of vampires, tying these myths to the dispersal of Babylon's residents. As these people spread across the globe, they allegedly carried stories of creatures that drain life, akin to a spider ensnaring a fly. These tales eventually seeped into Eastern European folklore, evolving over centuries and influencing today's vampire stories. From Nimrod's legacy, we enter Mesopotamia's eerie world of spirits and ancient fears, shaping their culture deeply. The spirits that shaped Mesopotamia. In his 1916 publication, Myths and Legends of Babylonia and Assyria, Lewis Spence describes Mesopotamia as a land shrouded in gloom and filled with an array of spirits. According to Spence, the grand temples and towering structures of Mesopotamia were not just architectural achievements, but deeply rooted in spiritual practices that involved frequent invocations meant to ward off or control these spirits. These ancient practices are described vividly, with mentions of various spirits, some benign and others less so, that roamed the streets and haunted the populace. These included everything from vampires and ghouls to other nightmarish entities. Such depictions are dramatic and heighten the sense of an ancient society surrounded by the supernatural. Kayla's book later delves into the vampire archetype, tracing its roots back to Babylonian culture. He explains how this dark concept of the vampire was not just popular in Eastern European myths, as people often thought. Many believed that tales of vampires were exclusive to places like Russia, Bohemia, and the Balkans. Yet studies have debunked this idea, showing that the fear of vampires was widespread, reaching across various cultures worldwide, from simple tribes to complex societies. Ancient Babylonia and Assyria, the idea of vampires was woven deeply into their culture. These vampires were known as the 7 evil spirits. Ancient texts describe them as fierce and unyielding, creatures that did not resemble humans. They were portrayed as genderless, like fierce winds, without the need for partners or children. These spirits were merciless, ignoring people's cries for mercy as they brought pain and suffering. These mythical beings were thought to bring destruction and disease. They were called several daunting names like the 7 gods of the broad earth, 7 robber gods, and 7 gods of might, each reflecting their powerful and terrifying nature. They were depicted as causing havoc everywhere, comparable to untamed bulls rampaging through civilizations carelessly, breaking into homes, and leaving destruction behind. The myths said there were 7 of these spirits, both in the heavens and on the earth, suggesting they were always around and impossible to avoid. They represented the height of aggression and violence in mythology, described as monsters who consumed human blood, flesh, and bones. This paints a grim picture of how ancient cultures viewed spiritual beings and the common human fear of what they did not understand. By exploring vampire myths from different cultures, Kayla shows how widespread these stories were. He points out that humans have always tried to make sense of death and the unknown by creating stories of monstrous beings that prey on life. These stories reflect a fundamental part of human nature, the need to give a face and a story to random tragedies, turning them into deliberate acts by malevolent creatures. This universal storytelling across different times and cultures highlights how people everywhere use myths to cope with the natural world and its many hardships. The area of Canaan was known for its bad behavior and its unusual inhabitants, including giants known as Nephilim. This notorious reputation might explain why the myth of the vampire, with its long, sharp teeth, is often associated with this region. According to legends, vampires feed on the blood of their victims. This detail closely resembles the ancient reptilian statues with similar sharp teeth found in Canaan, a resemblance that is hard to overlook. There had been discussions about a mythical creature known as the Dogman. This creature was noted for its canine features, which served as a reminder of the diverse mix of people in Canaan. This mix was believed to be the result of a lineage tainted by misdeeds that originated from Ham's family after their departure from Babylon. This concept of enduring malevolence finds support in biblical narratives, particularly in the tales that recount the obliteration of cities like Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities were destroyed because of their profound wickedness, as detailed in the sacred texts. Such stories reinforce the idea that the sins of ancestors could have lingering effects on their descendants, exemplified by the continuing presence of evil in the form of various beings and happenings, including the Dogman. These biblical stories highlight a deep-rooted corruption that not only affected the people, but also their environment. This choice of darkness over light, of choosing evil over good, has been passed down through generations. This is evident from their rituals involving the summoning of spirits and their troubling interactions with these beings. It seems that the seed of the serpent found a fitting home in Canaan, thriving in an atmosphere saturated with wrongdoing. When Joshua entered this land, known for its abundance, it was clear that the destruction of these corrupt beings was part of their new inheritance, a fulfillment of a divine promise going back to the curse placed on the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Vampires, often seen as symbols of aristocratic excess, actually represent a deep-seated evil, a reflection of an ancient curse on those who reveled in bloodshed and chaos. This connection between ancient myths and religious texts isn't just a coincidence. It shows a recurring theme of historical transgressions, where beings like vampires are not just fantasy, but represent real historical evils and divine judgment. These beings, once revered as gods, now symbolize humanity's fall and the ongoing battle to regain their lost purity through the very essence of life, blood. Yet, in Christian teachings, the only truly sanctifying blood is that of Christ, symbolizing sacrifice and redemption. The fascination with these dark tales does more than entertain. It offers a glimpse into the perennial human conflict between wrongdoing and salvation, between remaining in darkness and seeking the light. If these stories have piqued your interest, exploring the original biblical texts might offer more profound insights than any secondary discussion could. Engaging in further discussions or exploring additional topics in this realm is encouraged. Your participation helps continue the exploration of these age-old tales of human nature, theological truths, and the enduring struggle between good and evil. As you ponder these themes, ask yourself, could ancient myths hold hidden truths about our past? Share your thoughts, leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more intriguing discussions.